Good afternoon. Welcome to the Committee on Housing for the Hawaii State Senate. We have our Tuesday, January 30th, 1 p.m. agenda today. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Thursday, February 1st at 1 p.m. in this room 225, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. We have a 1 minute per testifier time limit. Our first bill today is Senate Bill 1170 relating to affordable housing credits, which requires the counties to issue affordable housing credits for affordable housing units that are constructed pursuant to 201H Hawaii Revised Statutes. Our first testifier on this bill is HFDC with comments.
This could provide additional financing for affordable housing projects. But we do because of the conflict that we will have to monitor.
Thank you. They stand on their comments. If you have something to say, you'll need to say that to the mic, otherwise our YouTube viewers can't hear it. I'd also like to welcome Vice Chair Hashimoto. Our next testifier is the City and County Department of Planning and Permitting in opposition. The County of Hawaii Office of Housing and Community Development with comments. AARP Hawaii in support. And NIOP Hawaii chapter in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Hashimoto, members of the committee, Evan Oya on behalf of NIOP Hawaii. You have our written testimony, but we did want to just express our strong support for this measure, as this will continue to incentivize utilization of the 201H process. Given the current interest rate environment, I think we are seeing a slowdown of potential projects and unit creation through utilization of the program. So NIOP Hawaii feels as though this is a financeable portion and a credit program that can be utilized to continue the development of housing in Hawaii. So you do have our testimony. We did recommend some just minor amendments in regards to conforming to a more updated version in SB 2840. So if you have any questions on those, I'll be happy to answer them. But thank you for the time, Chair and Vice Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 1170? If not, members, are there any questions? If not, we'll move to our next bill today, Senate Bill 1208 relating to taxation, which increases the low-income housing renters income tax credit. Our first testifier is Department of Taxation with comments.
Chair, Vice Chair, my name is Garrison Kurth, representing the Department of Taxation. The department stands on its written comments.
And they have questions. They stand on their comments. Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on our written comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Americans for Democratic Action in support. Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. AARP Hawaii in support. And Aloha United Way in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 1208? Not any comments or questions, members? If not, we'll move forward to our next bill, Senate Bill 1461 relating to building industry professionals, which amends the exemption from the requirement that plans and specifications for construction projects be prepared and construction observed by a licensed engineer, architect, or landscape architect to be determined by floor area of work rather than estimated cost. And it exempts 1 or 2 storied structures that are primarily used as a residence from such requirements. Our first testifier is Grassroots Institute of Hawaii with comments, followed by Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Sheena Choi. I'm the Executive Officer for the Board of Professional Engineers, Architects, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects. The board stands on its written comments, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Daniel G. Chun in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 1461? If not, members, any questions? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our next measure, Senate Bill 2029, relating to inclusionary zoning, which prohibits any law, ordinance, or rule from imposing an inclusionary zoning requirement on housing offered exclusively for sale or rent in perpetuity to buyers or renters who are residents of the state, are owner occupants or renters, and do not own any other real property. It requires each county to submit a report on its inclusionary zoning requirements to the legislature every year. Our first testifier on Senate Bill 2029 is HHFDC in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, and support this.
They stand in support. City and County Department of Planning and Permitting in opposition. Grassroots Institute of Hawaii with comments. And Church of the Crossroads in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2029? Members, any questions? All right, seeing none. Our next bill is Senate Bill 2042, relating to housing. Requires counties to grant building permits within 60 days if the application is stamped and certified by a licensed engineer and architect. Okay. Our first testifier is Department of Land and Natural Resources with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. Ryan Kanakole, First Deputy, DLNR. We stand on our testimony offering comments, and we'd like to note that we made similar recommendations to Senate Bill 2027, which was adopted by this committee, specifically to clarify when a permit application is considered complete. We suggest that before determining an application is complete, that there should be some sort of assurance regarding compliance with our historic preservation laws under Chapter 60 HRS and compliance with requirements for continued participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. I'd also like to point out that at page 4, lines 13 to 20 of this bill, it provides that the counties need to ensure compliance within 60 days, ensure compliance with applicable land use ordinances, but it does not say whether what happens after that date, whether the project is deemed compliant. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony, and we're here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanford Car Development LLC in support. Grassroots Institute of Hawaii with comments. Hawaii Habitat for Humanity Association in support. Hawaii Government Employees Association in opposition. BIA Hawaii in support. Chamber of Commerce Hawaii in support. Maui County Council Chair Alice Lee in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2042? Not any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to SB 2063 relating to housing. Requires any government agency that exercises its authority to develop low or moderate income housing projects to process any low or moderate income housing project that meets the development requirements of Chapter 201H Hawaii Revised Statutes and applicable administrative rules. Our first testifier for Senate Bill 2063 is HHFDC in support.
Yes, Chair, Vice Chair, we do support the bill. We offer alternative language, and we are open to amendments to the language to clarify the intent of the bill.
Thank you. Next is Hawaii DLNR with comments.
We stand on our comments.
Stand on their comments, and then Stanford Car Development LLC in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2063? Any members, any questions? I have a question for HHFDC. So thank you for submitting alternative language. The chair's taken a look at some of the precise language, and we've come up with a different draft, which inserts the word provided that the legislative body may not impose requirements for resident incomes lower than those adopted or established by the state. Do you think that that would clearly effectuate the intent of this measure?
Yes, that is clearer language. Yes.
Thank you. And should we also delete the existing paragraph B on page 4, lines 4 through 10?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you very much. We'll move forward to Senate Bill 2066, Relating to housing, which requires certain projects meeting the criteria of section 201H-38A1 HRS to be exclusively for sale or rent to occupants or Hawaii residents who own no other real property. Our first testifier for SB 2066 is HHFDC with comments. They stand on their comments. DLNR with comments. They stand on their comments, and then Church of the Crossroads in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2066? If not, any questions, members? Okay, I have a question for HHFDC. Also, like to welcome committee member Senator Awa. Does the income restriction in Hawaii revised statutes, in Hawaii Administrative Rules 15-307 26C apply to projects under this bill?
Yes, all projects under within the 201H38 must meet our administrative rule requirements for a development proposal. And under those administrative rules, there are criteria for affordability.
What would happen if under this proposed new section A2, qualified residents, which is the term that you suggest used to define the group of people who can access these units, what if we define them, what if we deem them to be moderate income households?
I would have to look into further how that affects our administrative rules, that they would need to be amended. I would have to look into that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members? If not, thank you very much. Our next bill is Senate Bill 2337 relating to housing, which expands the county's authorization to exercise the same powers as HHFDC for purposes of developing, constructing, financing, refinancing, or providing mixed income housing, mixed income projects, and mixed use developments. Authorizes units in low and moderate income housing projects to be made available to households with higher incomes if there is an insufficient number of persons or families who meet income qualifying requirements. And it applies to bond proceeds expended by a county after 12/31/23. Our first testifier is HHFDC in support. Stand in support. DLNR with comments. Thank you. City and County of Honolulu in support. Thank you. They stand in support. Pacific Resource Partnership in support. Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters in support.
We'll stand on our written testimony.
Stand in support. Grassroots Institute of Hawaii with comments. And Hawaii YIMBY in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2337? Okay, members, any questions? Vice Chair.
Maybe DLNR. So I see you testified the same thing in the last couple of bills. So I'm just trying to figure out what exactly you want, or what is the purpose of your comments?
I'm going to call up Carol from our flood, handles our national flood insurance.
Okay.
Hi, Carol Tialpin, DLNR. The reason for our comments is we want to be put on record that any existing state law, county laws are inconsistent with the NFIP. In 2016, FEMA sent a letter to then Governor Ige regarding the noncompliance with the building permit exemptions under 4688 was an existing legislation. They were threatening to suspend the state and the counties from the NFIP because it was inconsistent with NFIP requirements. for participation. So because 201 201H 30 has existing exemptions from all laws, we are put on record to just say that that is actually inconsistent. We have not gotten any kind of feedback from FEMA on it because, you know, they don't know about it as of yet. But if they did, they would put us on notice and give us a timeline to fix it. And that's what happened with the 4688. And so we went in 2017 legislative session, and Act 70 corrected that.
So you corrected it, but it's still a problem?
For the ag lands. No. I mean, it got corrected in terms of kind of carving out special flood hazard areas from a building permit exemption, because anything in a special flood hazard area, any development, which is very a broad term that under the NFIP has to have a permit.
Okay, so what do you want us to do then?
Well, we can carve out special flood hazard areas, kind of like what we did for 4688, saying the building permit exemption still exists for agricultural, but if it's in a special flood hazard area, then you cannot exercise the exemption.
So you're talking for every project though?
Yeah.
Or any project under 201H is your concern? So what are you talking about in terms of when you're, but this bill is specifically a financing mechanism. You understand
So
that?
yeah, we don't have a problem with the proposed amendments. We're just being put on record to say that the existing 201H that has exemptions is problematic.
Okay, well, maybe you should differentiate between which bill you're adding those comments to though, because this is a financing mechanism, right? So if you want us to do something about it, we can do something about it, but to just make a blanket statement on every single bill, to me, it doesn't make sense. Like we should fix it, right? And so you should give us the language to fix it and we'll put it in, but I don't know what you want us to do if you're just going to keep saying the same thing over and over in every single bill.
No, understood, Vice Chair, and we'll be more judicious in our use of the testimony moving forward.
So do you have a problem though with the flood zone, with this language allowing the counties to do more mixed use projects?
Specific to this bill, no.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further questions? I'd like to also welcome our committee member, Senator Aquino, and the chair has questions for the city and county.
Committee members. Kevin O'Shea, Deputy Director of Housing, City and County of Honolulu.
Welcome back to the city.
Thank you so much.
So the city already has the power to develop low and moderate income housing. And that means that you have the power to develop projects where half the units are affordable to 140% AMI and half are unrestricted. So now the city is asking for mixed income, the power to develop mixed income projects, which in this bill means that none of the projects have income limits.
Maybe I can attempt to clarify. So HRS 39A-281 allows the city to build to 20% at 50% AMI, plus 40% at 80 AMI, or 20% at 50 AMI and 60% at 140 AMI. So there's that first option, that would cover 60% of the units. So 40% of those units could be market rate, for instance. On the alternative option, up to 20% of the units could be market rate. So the language proposed seeks to clarify 4615 at the advice of bond counsel. So we already, to answer your question, we already have the ability, we believe, but it was at the advice of bond counsel that we include the language in 4615 as well.
In your opinion, HRS 46, do you have that in writing?
39A-281, sure. Would you like to see that?
Yeah, thank you.
It's two sections there that I think respond to questions that were raised.
Are you proposing to amend this section?
Not beyond what we've proposed in the proposed amendments.
This bill is amending section 46.
Correct.
Can you explain why? Can you explain?
Yes, so my understanding is our bill references that section.
Doesn't your bill just amend section 46-15(1)?
Yes.
Sure, yes, so it amends that section, however, the
Can you identify
definition.
yourself?
Oh, sorry, Kevin Wong with the Managing Director's Office. The bill, the definitions in the bill reference chapter 39.
It's on page 5, line 15, center. The definition of low and moderate income housing references section 39A-281.
It does so in section 46-15(1).
In our proposed amendment, or in the proposed bill, the new language, creating the definition of fixed income projects references the guidance in section 39A.
Okay, so what are you, and so for mixed income, what is your new proposed definition?
It's the
Yeah, sure. So for mixed income, it means any housing project that, in addition to low and moderate income housing units, as defined under 39A-281, would include housing units for households with incomes higher than provided under section 39A-281, which is basically the differential that I just mentioned.
our intent is for it to provide further clarification, so that basically we don't have this problem where we're going back and forth between this section and 39. And that was a recommendation from bond counsel.
Or
So, okay, higher then. So is there any limit on that?
Our understanding based on the recommendation from bond counsel is that that would be that 140% that's specified in 39A already. So we believe it's the same.
Where is that specified in 39A? Under number 2 here?
I believe, I don't remember the exact.
so it's Senator, it's not specifically specified, it's implied. So 20% at 50 AMI, 40% at AMI, and the balance of the units can be beyond that, so market rate and above.
So how many units have to be low and moderate income, and how many units can be unlimited?
Under the two formulas, 60% of the units would be at 80 AMI below, or 80% of the units would be at 140 AMI below.
You're seeking, okay, so under a mixed income project,
Mhm.
what percentage of the units have to be income restricted?
It would be the same.
The same thing. It's
But you're saying in addition to low and moderate income housing units, it includes units for households with incomes higher than.
It currently, and I think that's where the confusion is, it currently already allows that. So 39A-281 currently already allows that. We're not asking for anything more. We're seeking to clarify it under 4615. So the two are equivalent, if you will.
But what is the minimum number of units that are income restricted in a mixed income project?
It would be subject to 39A-281 as defined in the proposed language, which would be 60% of the units would have to be at 80 AMI and below, which is broken out
But you're
further.
saying in addition to those low and moderate income units, it also includes housing units with incomes higher than those.
Yeah, and
So-
we already have that ability. We'll already have that ability.
So I understand that these units have to be 60% at 80 AMI. But
Sure.
what about these units?
Right now, there is no restriction.
There's no,
restriction.
so you could
That's
build
correct.
one of these units and 1,000 of these units?
No, you'd have to be, it's a percentage. So
So what
20%,
percentage is these and what percentage?
Certainly.
is these?
20% of the units would have to be 50 AMI and below. So if we're at a 100-unit project, 20 of the units would have to be at 50 AMI and below. And 40% of the units, or 40 units, would have to be at 80 AMI and below. And the balance, 40%, would be unrestricted. Or the developer could choose to restrict 20% of the units at 50 AMI and below, 20 units, or 60% of the units at 140 AMI and below. It's 80% of the units, therefore 20 would be unrestricted, 20 would remain unrestricted. So we're not asking for anything additional. We're asking to clarify the language for 4615 pursuant to the recommendation of bond council.
I think the problem is your language says,
Mhm.
in addition to low and moderate housing units. Low and moderate housing units already include 40% of the units as undefined. Right?
Yeah, maybe we are misinterpreting the recommendation from bond council, but I think the way we read it, it's not that it's in addition, it's also would include things with a higher income than provided under section.
So if the bill were to say includes up to 40% of the units at 140% of AMI, or you want it market, right?
Yeah.
So if the bill were to say includes up to 40% of the units at market with no income restrictions, would that do the same thing?
I think it would be an overreach, actually, because 80% of the units, depending on which option the developer chose, perhaps only 20% of the units would be marketed.
So can you provide us with language that is clearer?
We can work on it and
We can
we'll
clarify
work
that.
with bond council to do it.
Apologize for the confusion.
Yeah. You also want the power to sell restricted units to higher income buyers.
I didn't see this.
On page 4.
Oh, indeed, and we already have that ability. I apologize. So under 39A 281-3, and maybe I can read this too, if that would be helpful.
Okay.
The project qualifies for federal tax exempt status pursuant to 26 USC section 142A7 and D, provided that if there is an insufficient number of persons or families who meet the income qualifying criteria, the developer of the housing project may make units available to households with higher incomes to ensure full occupancy of the housing project.
So why do you need this language?
Again, it's advice of counsel to clarify that.
And can you furnish that to us too?
Sure, certainly.
Okay, that's all of the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time today.
And for HHFTC, I have questions too. So the city has claimed that HHFTC has these powers already. I guess I now understand. I think a little bit better what they're asking for mixed income housing. So based on your interpretation of that conversation, is that already a city power and already an HHFTC power?
For light tech projects, yes.
Okay.
There is flexibility to move among the AMI categories to fill units.
Okay, what about the mixed income housing thing?
For mixed income housing, if you're not including light tech, then no. You know, a project sets aside, say, 60% of units at an affordable rate. They're not allowed to go above that affordable rate unless, I suppose, our board could entertain a proposal, but.
So what about the remaining part, the remaining units? They're saying that 40 or 6 or 20% of the units are market under.
Yeah, so there's no limitation on the market rates.
Okay, so that exists already in your agency as well. Thank you. Okay, members, any further questions on Senate Bill 2337? Okay, if not, thank you very much. We'll move on to Senate Bill 2469. Relating to the rental housing revolving fund, which adds credit enhancement for construction loans to the list of permitted use of monies in the rental housing revolving fund. It requires HHFDC to adopt rules. And we have HHFDC in support. They stand on their support. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2469? If not, do we have any questions, members? Okay, I have Chair has a question for HHFDC. So HRS 201H-202H already, it caps the RHRF's loan to value ratio at 100% and the debt to coverage ratio at 1:1. Does that need to be amended to allow RHRF to provide credit enhancement?
We don't believe so. We can double check with our AG, but this is a credit enhancement for construction loan, not a permanent loan. So it's, it should be paid off when the permanent loan closes.
So for example, if there were $10 million that was set aside for this purpose, you would only guarantee $10 million worth of loans?
No, it depends on the size of the loan. If it was a 1 million loans or something like that, we wouldn't, the construction loan was say $10 million, we wouldn't loan more than $10 million.
Well, you wouldn't be loaning it, right? You'd be guaranteeing it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be guaranteeing more than 10.
What if you had 10 million in the fund, a $20 million loan?
Well, the issue there is if we didn't have the money, we wouldn't, short answer, we wouldn't do it. I mean, if we didn't have enough to cover, basically we have to have reserves sufficient to cover the guarantee, the credit enhancement.
On a one-to-one basis?
That's what we got to determine, but for today's discussion, let's say it's 1-to-1, yeah.
But that doesn't, then the credit enhancement doesn't really add any value, right? Because you're not getting any leverage.
We are, because we're actually using our liquidity fund to do it. There's always a balance in the rental housing revolving fund because we have appropriations, we have money, and it's committed to projects, but it hasn't been expended. We expend money out of the rental housing revolving fund as they make requests for it. So there's typically a balance in the fund of money that's awarded, but not dispersed.
Our understanding is that for credit enhancement, it does not have to be a dollar for dollar commitment to provide credit enhancement. It just has to be a percentage of the senior lender's loan to provide them with greater security.
In other words, 201H-202H does not restrict your ability to guarantee loans that have a greater than 1-to-1 ratio to the cash that you're holding in the fund. So you could guarantee $3 worth of loans, for example.
Yes, we would have to look at that.
It may.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, members? If not, our next bill is Senate Bill 2833 relating to affordable housing development, which appropriates funds to HHFDC for the establishment and hiring of an unspecified number of project management 3 positions to aid in the development of affordable housing options in the state. Our first testifier for 2833 is Office of Planning and Sustainable Development and Support. Stand in support. HHFDC in support. Stand in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2833? Okay, if not, members, any questions? It's Vice Chair.
So Dean, come on up. So I guess, can you explain to the committee, where does this position how does it help you in the bigger scheme of what you're trying to accomplish? Because we've been trying to ask you, what is your plan for staffing, right? And so we need to know how this fits into the broader scheme of what you're trying to do at HHFDC.
Sure. So this would go into our development branch, which has many duties, among them developing projects on state-owned lands, administering DERF loans, administering 201H projects. So we have a lot of activity in the development branch right now. So this project manager would help to manage initiatives on Maui in particular. HFDC has been designated the lead for the housing recovery support function by the state. So we are heavily involved in Maui in looking at housing solutions there. So this person could help there. We are also working on certain projects across the state, such as Mahilona Hospital in Kauai, where we're looking at redeveloping that site for affordable housing and other uses. Also for mixed use leasehold projects statewide, we're collaborating with West Oahu and HCDA on a potential leasehold project there. So there's a lot of activity in the development branch, and this project manager could support those activities.
Right. So I think the question we're gonna get asked is, how many vacancies do you have? Why can't we re-describe one of those positions? So I think we need to see all that, right, and how it's all interplaying and making sure that those are taken care of as well, right? And we can't move any of those positions around before we start giving you a new position.
Right, and I'd be happy to share with the committee, other members about our staffing plan. We do have a plan to address our needs. In addition to the project manager positions, there are needs throughout the agency.
Yeah, we would love to see that. We've been waiting for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions, members? Okay, we'll move then next to Senate Bill 2870 relating to HHFDC, which establishes a working group within HHFDC to identify existing mixed-use developments in Maui County that could be acquired by HHFDC. First testifier is HHFDC in support. Thank you. OPSD with comments.
We stand on our testimony.
Stand on their testimony. And we have Maui County Council Chair Alice Lee in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2870? Okay, if not, members, any questions? The chair has one question for OPSD, which is how much funding is needed to allow HHFDC to fulfill the purpose of this measure?
Thank you, Chair Harrison for OPSD. We don't have an answer as to that. I would defer to HHFDC. I think it will depend. We understand your goal of acquiring, existing mixed-use development properties, but it would depend on the type of property and the amount of land. We would defer to HHFDC for any more specific answer.
Okay, but if the working group doesn't exist yet to identify those properties, then they also would have no way of knowing, right?
That's true. We think that a working group to acquire properties without funding, though, we defer to you on whether to establish it, but we just noted that your intent is to actually buy property. So if we wanted to advance it, it would make it more real if there was funding attached. It's just a comment.
Any other questions, members? If not, we've now come to our final bill today, which is Senate Bill 2925 relating to HHFDC, which requires HHFDC to hold at least one application period each year to receive applications from parties interested in applying for financing of projects to develop or improve infrastructure that is or will be used solely for certain housing projects. Requires HHFDC to adopt certain administrative rules and declares that the general fund expenditure ceiling is exceeded and makes an appropriation into and out of the dwelling unit revolving fund. Our first testifier is HHFDC in support. Thank you. They stand in support. And then Maui County Council Chair Alice Lee in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2925? If not, members, are there any questions? Okay. Okay, if not, Chair also questions answered. We've come to the end of our agenda, so the committee will be going into recess and we'll be back for a decision making. Good afternoon and welcome back to the Committee on Housing. We are now ready for some decision making, starting with Senate Bill 1170 relating to affordable housing credits. So the chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure with amendments. We'll take the amendments from the County of Hawaii Office of Housing and Community Development, enabling DHHL to enter into specific MOAs with not just Kauai, Honolulu, and Hawaii County, but all the counties. We'll also take NIOP Hawaii's recommendation to include HCDA affordable housing requirements in the definition of affordable housing obligation, and also to amend and replace page 7 lines 19 to 21 to include each county and the HCDA shall recognize housing units developed pursuant to section 201H-38 and issue affordable housing credits to the eligible developer for residences required to be sold or rented to individuals within a specified income range if a developer chooses to receive affordable housing credits. Also from SMA, we will be taking their recommendation to amend the repeal and reenactment date to reflect Act 90, 2023, and finally, technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, do we have any questions or discussion? If not, so for Senate Bill 1170, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 1170 with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Aquino.
Aye.
Senator Kanuha is excused. Senator Awa.
Aye.
Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next, we have Senate Bill 1208 relating to taxation. Chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure with amendments. We'll take Department of Taxation's amendment to amend the effective date to apply to taxable years beginning after December 31st, 2023, and also the Democratic Party of Hawaii's amendments to update the renter's credit to recover lost ground to inflation by indexing future increases to the Consumer Price Index, and to raise the credit value above $100 by using tax brackets for individuals and different categories of households, as in SB 55, 2023. Any questions or comments, members? Not for SB 1208, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 1208, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any members with reservations? Any members voting no with the excuse of Senator Kanuha for the rest of the calendar unless noted? Your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next, SB 1461 relating to building industry professionals. Chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure with amendments and to take the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii's amendments to amend the measure to bring the base language of the bill in line with the new statutory language reflected in Act 177, 2023. Members, any questions, comments? See none. SB 1461 recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 1461, recommendation is passed with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Hearing none. Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2029 relating to inclusionary zoning. The chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure with amendments. We have technical non-substantive amendments from SMA. The city's Department of Planning and Permitting will delete Section 2 requirement for report on inclusionary zoning requirements. And we'll also insert a purpose section that describes the state's substantial reason for the difference in treatment and the substantial relationship to the state's objective. Any questions or discussion, members? See none. SB 2029, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2029, Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no?
No.
Senator Awa, no vote. Any other members voting no with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next, Senate Bill 2042 relating to housing. Chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments from DLNR to clarify that either a county cannot consider an application complete until it has made a reasonable and good faith determination that the project does not have the potential to affect historic properties, archaeological resources, or burial sites, or the project has been submitted to SHPT and the HRS Chapter 6E process has been completed. Also, developers would show documentation that the proposed development does not encroach in special flood hazard areas identified as A or V zones on the FEMA flood insurance rate maps, or have been reviewed for floodplain management compliance and issued a development permit for construction by the applicable community official. We'll also take Grassroots Institute's suggestion to add to the end of Section 2 to ensure the permit is automatically approved after 60 days. If a permit submitted under this section is not approved by the county within 60 days of a complete application being filed, it shall be deemed approved provided that county approval has not been delayed due to non-compliance of the permit with applicable state or county ordinances. Nothing in this section should be construed to allow any violation of federal, state, or county laws or rules. And then finally, SMA technical non-substantive amendments. Members, any questions or concerns? Oh, and also we'll note in the committee report HGEA's concerns and suggestions. Okay, so for SB 2042, the chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. The chair votes aye.
Members, chair's recommendation, SB 2042 is passed with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Hearing none, or your measures adopted, Chair.
Thank you. Next, Senate Bill 2063 relating to housing. Chair's recommendation will be to pass this with amendments. We'll take HHFDC's suggestion and we'll amend subparagraph A of section 201H-38 to insert, well, to read, the legislative body shall approve with modification, or disapprove the project by resolution within 45 days after the corporation has submitted the preliminary plans and specifications for the project to the legislative body, provided that the legislative body may not impose requirements for resident incomes lower than those adopted or established by the state. If on the 46th day a project is not disapproved, it shall be deemed approved by the legislative body. And we'd also delete the existing paragraph B on page 4, lines 4 through 10. Any questions or discussion on this? Okay. So for Senate Bill 2063, the chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2063, chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? With all others voting aye, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Next, Senate Bill 2066 relating to housing. The chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments. We'll take HHFDC's suggestion to adopt the definition of qualified resident as in section 201H-32, so that page 4, lines 11 to 13 reads, shall be exclusively for sale or rent to qualified residents. We'll also specify that under this section A2, qualified residents are deemed to be moderate income households. Any questions or discussion? Okay, so for Senate Bill 2066, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2066, chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? With all others voting aye, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Vice Chair. For Senate Bill 2337 relating to housing, Chair's recommendation will be to defer decision-making to Thursday, February 1st at 1 p.m. The Chair wants to see in writing some language that would clarify the definition of mixed income projects per the discussion that we had in the hearing today. And also the power to sell restricted units as was discussed in the hearing today. Okay, we'll move next to Senate Bill 2469 relating to rental housing revolving fund. Chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure unamended. Any discussion or questions, members? Okay, recommendation for Senate Bill 2469 pass unamended. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2469 is passing unamended. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Hearing with all others voting aye, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2833 relating to affordable housing development. Chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments. We'll take HHFDC's amendments to clarify the position title as Project Manager 3, that it's a 1 FTE and an appropriation amount of $213,785, representing an annual salary of $130,000 plus fringe. We'll also note in the committee report the purpose of the project manager position and the need for further clarity on personnel planning by the agency. Members, any questions or discussion? Okay, for SB 2833, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2833 with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no?
No.
No for Senator Awa. Any others voting with reservations or no? Hearing none, all others voting aye, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. For Senate Bill 2870 relating to HHFDC, the recommendation from the chair will be to pass this measure unamended, and in the committee report, we'll also note OPSD's concerns about the lack of funding to acquire these properties. Any discussion or questions, members? Okay, seeing none, SB 2870, recommendation pass unamended. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2870, chair's recommendation is passed unamended. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? With all others voting aye, recommendation is adopted.
And that brings us to our last bill, which is SB 2925 relating to HHFTC. Again, the chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure unamended. Any questions or discussion, members? Seeing none, SB 2925, chair's recommendation pass unamended. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2925, recommendation that shows pass unamended. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? With all others voting aye, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And there being no further business, this hearing is adjourned.